I was a lot more burned out, I think, than my colleagues were. And I didn't know exactly why, but I knew I had energy and passion when I was creating something. There's good days and bad days. There's things that feel overwhelming, and then there's things that I get done doing whatever it is, and I go like, I feel like I was made for this.
Meet Rebekah Olson, CPA, the CEO of the Maryland Association of CPAs, MACPA, leading a community of 8,000 plus professionals within a 125-year-old institution. From public accounting to association leadership, she's focused on building community, developing the next generation of CPAs, and guiding the profession through change. A people-first leader, she's redefining what leadership looks like in modern accounting.
I've always kind of likened my career path to Lombard Street in San Francisco. It looks crazy, but it's designed like that on purpose. It's actually how you safely get to the bottom of that hill, right? With those switchbacks. When I think about my career and I think about where I am now, I have arrived here safely because of the things along the way. On Tuesdays, for about 3 or 4 hours, I have a block that nobody can schedule time. That's supposed to be my time to really think about the bigger picture.
How do you practice visioning if you don't see yourself as a visionary, or if you don't see yourself as good enough of a visionary to inspire people? How do you do that?
I guess it goes back to that.
As you've been listening to this guest, you're probably starting to ask your questions. How do I apply this to our own situation, our own succession story at the company that I'm working in now? At GWCPA, we have built a custom GPT that you can find linked down in the description below on our website. We have loaded this GPT up with all of our knowledge about public accounting and tax preparation around succession planning. We've also included the insights from the guests from the past 2 years of interviews at the Art of Succession. You can find all of that at the custom GPT. Use it any time of day. Start to apply it to your situation. Ask it the questions that are keeping you awake at night. I want to thank you for listening so far, and let's get back to the episode.
Welcome to the Art of Succession podcast with Barrett Young. Join us as we explore the strategies, stories, and insights that shape the journey of leadership transitions and business success. No matter where you find yourself along the journey, this is the podcast where you'll find the tools to make it happen.
My name is Barrett Young, and this is the Art of Succession podcast. My guest today is Rebekah Olson, fellow CPA and the CEO of our Maryland Association of CPAs. Rebekah is a longtime friend of mine and a fantastic advocate for the future of our profession, and she's now at the head of a 125-year-old organization. In our conversation today, we're going to get into taking on the responsibility of stepping into an existing organization and guiding that into the future. Rebekah, welcome to the Art of Succession.
Thank you so much, Barrett. Yeah, great to be here.
I have my specific reasons why I want to have you on the show and the way that I see this conversation going, but I just want to hear from you as the guest. Like, what excites you about this conversation? What brings you to the Art of Succession podcast? What do you want our listeners to take away from our conversation most?
Well, Barrett, it's interesting, because I obviously have stepped into this role almost 4 years ago, 3.5. And it's a little bit different, right? Because an association, so a nonprofit association, and so really just a steward of something that's been built for a very long time by a community of people, not just by like an owner or even a family, right? So to step in and to lead 8,000 plus CPAs and members across the state, and something that a lot of people put their trust in, their careers in, is a unique challenge, but also just a wonderful delight, because I love being able to work for the CPA profession, which I love so much, and that I'm a part of in a different way, right? I don't work in it. I'm not serving in a firm. I'm not in an accounting finance team inside a company. I'm leading a community of people. It's a little bit different, but it's been a unique journey. So happy to share what I've learned along the way.
That's what I'm most interested in. Unique to family businesses, but really succession planning. And this is the thesis behind the Art of Succession podcast, is stepping into the shoes of somebody else who precedes you. And I think the further down you get into third, fourth, fifth generation family businesses, but then especially you're talking 125-year-old member organization, third or fourth, maybe sixth in the nation, something like that, when the profession was just getting started. That is such a unique mantle, such a unique responsibility. And I know I feel that as, future managing partner of an 80-year-old CPA firm. And that's what I've really loved about these conversations. I was on the founder side, starting a brand new business from scratch. And now it's like a whole different skill set needed to guide a cruise ship that's already en route to its destination, right? That's kind of how I think of it.
Great example. In fact, I've said it a couple times over the last like month or so, just strategy wise, like the seas, things are going, things are changing. The profession that we serve or I serve as MACPA has shifted so much. And so it's like we need to move this ship in the right direction, but the North Star, the destination has always been this community of thriving accounting and finance leaders, right, in Maryland. And so kind of that navigating and moving that ship. And, you have a lot of people on board, people that are brand new and excited and innovative about what they want to do. And then you have people that have been around for a really long time and have amazing wisdom and legacy in terms of what they've built. And so it's like trying to make sure that you're able to lead throughout that pretty wide range of professionals. It's definitely a challenge.
I mean, that's our conversation. I'm excited to have it. Let's get some context here because I want to know, like, how did you get started in the profession? How did you come to the MACPA? At what point did you say, I want to be here for my career? Let's talk a little bit about that. So provide me just a little bit of background. We'll provide our guests, our audience, for a little bit of background about Rebekah.
Yeah. So, gosh, how far back do we want to go? I've always, like, even as a child, was super business minded. So I knew I wanted to do something business. I think I probably started like 5 little companies before I was 12. Like I was just that kind of child. When I went to college, I was, and I still am, a big sports fan. And so I actually went to college with the idea that I would be majoring in sports management. And so I actually have a degree in sports management, but I have a double major in a sports management and accounting because when I got there, I was able to kind of create a specialization within the business school at Ohio State for sports management. But then, as part of that, started taking accounting classes and fell in love with the language of business, right? And so saw that would be kind of my superpower in going into what I dreamed was the NFL offices and asking for a job. Having accounting and understanding the language of money and business would be my superpower, right? To stand out.
Gotcha.
So that's what got me into accounting originally. Obviously, I didn't choose to continue down the sports path. I'm in a much different role. Still a big sports fan, but what landed me really in this role was first going through and working in public accounting. So I worked for a top 100 firm in Maryland as an auditor after interning actually at 2 top 100 firms. And then about 3 years into that, so I was promoted to senior, I got my CPA. I just realized that I had all these other passions and interests and things, particularly around supporting and raising up the next generation within inside our firm. And so I was doing a lot of intern and new hire like training and things like that. And at the same time, I had my like client work piling up. And I just one day kind of looked around and realized I was a lot more burned out, I think, than my colleagues were. And I didn't know exactly why. But I knew I had energy and passion when I was creating something to teach other people about, the onboarding or even like recruiting, talking about the profession more. And then we did a leadership assessment type thing in one of our CPE trainings with all of my, senior colleagues, the people that I had actually interned with, and we all got the job at the same time. It was this great cohort of friends. And this assessment that we did in this training described me as spirited and considerate, which I thought were great words. Like, who doesn't want to be spirited and considerate? They're not the first 2 words I think of when I think of the CPA profession or like a firm partner or leader. But, I thought, does that sound more like a kindergarten teacher? My sister is a kindergarten teacher. So I thought, like, crap, what happened here?
I'm in the wrong profession. My
Yeah, it was a little
personality
scary.
doesn't fit.
But then the kicker was every one of my colleagues, all of my friends that I had, interned with and things like that, came out as direct and systematic. I was like, okay, now this is maybe starting to make a little bit more sense. It's not that I can't do this work, I can, but I just maybe go about it in a different way. And to me, it was kind of shocking at first, like, this is different. And to them, they're like, of course, yeah, and we all have known that you're totally weird and different. And nobody told me. But it was just that moment where I was like, I'm trying to do something in an environment, in a structure that isn't maybe the best place for me to thrive. And I had some other things I wanted to do, and the firm was amazing, and supported me, but it just wasn't the right fit at the right time. And so I decided to leave public accounting. I actually got a career coach at the time who, after interviewing me and talking with me and working with me, basically said, like, is there a trade association you can work for? Like, you love this profession, you understand it, you speak the language, but you would do really well working for it, advocating for it, in a different way, instead of kind of working inside the actual, work. And there was. The tricky thing about it, which we'll get into probably later, as well, is I had been around the association in Maryland for CPAs my entire life because my mother worked there. My mother was not a CPA. Obviously that had an influence on how I saw accounting because I had been around CPAs. She was a communications, public relations person that started the MACPA before I was born, and had a 40 plus year career there, and ended up retiring as the CEO, kind of an interim CEO. We can have that whole story later, but had been the COO for a very long time. And so that was complicated then. Like, how do I just go work for this local association, which would be a great job and a great fit for me, but I can't there's issues there, right? So I actually ended up talking to some friends that are at another state society, so a different state. I actually talked about moving to another state where I'd be the CFO of another state society. I'm really glad that didn't work out.
Yeah, we almost lost you. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I love my home. I'm a homebody. But I looked at a bunch of different things. And at the same time, when I thought, MACPA is not an option, basically I need to look at other state societies or the AICPA, or other, relevant association or groups. I started helping out with a particular need at MACPA that they had. And it was part-time, a couple hours. I was putting together like curriculum basically for a big conference, a national conference, that someone had come to them to ask to help with. So I started doing that part-time, and I just kept on doing that. And then I did some more of that. And then one day, the CEO at the time came to me and said, I really want to hire you full-time. Like, that you fit here, you know what you're doing great work, you can speak to the profession in a unique way. He was at the time doing a lot of student presentations and would take me along, because I was the young person, and so he wanted me to get out there and tell students about what it's really like and my experience and how I passed the CPA exam and all of those questions. And so I would go to these just to help him, and then he'd end up pointing to me and say, Becca, stand up and tell him about this, or tell me. And I ended up speaking in front of people, which is not something I ever thought I would do. I did not go to school to be in public speaking, right? Like, as CPAs, there's not many stages you get on, generally. But I found myself doing that all of a sudden a lot more. And so one day it just came, and my mom actually was out of town on business, and he called her, and he told her, hey, I'm just going to hire Rebekah full time because so this is happening and you're out of town, so you can't do anything about it. So that's how that happened. So I started working. I was on the Business Learning Institute side, doing mostly curriculum planning and training, but also on the membership side with student stuff, just going to colleges, really promoting the profession. That evolved. And I started doing more, both actual public speaking, creating of content, as well as strategic planning, facilitation, and then more and more membership things. There were some changes in the organization, and an opportunity came to be the membership manager. So I stepped into that role. That role evolved, and we ended up building up our MACPA Foundation more. So I took on that, and so I was the director of development. And then and then COVID hit, and so I was director of development, which was always kind of hard to explain. And development sounded like the best broad term to use, because I was in charge of membership. So we had 8 to 9,000 members throughout the state that I helped develop. I was in charge of doing some content, teaching CPE classes. That felt like development. I was in charge of all of our student pipeline initiatives, foundation. That could be termed development as well. And so development was the general term we used for me and the various things that I did. COVID hit. And the organization, like many organizations, had to shift. And we did really well, I think. And at the time, our CEO got an opportunity to go up to the national organization to leave MACPA and kind of represent the profession nationally and actually internationally in his role. So he went to do that. At the time, Jackie, my mom, the board selected her to kind of move into the CEO role. She knew she only had, I think she had 2 or 3 years before she wanted to retire. So she was kind of take that on. And at the time, with just the shift in resources and the change in just the business model, the part of the transition to selling of the Business Learning Institute, all of those things meant we didn't hire a COO. So then we had just this leadership team model that worked really well. And then my grandmother actually got sick, and my mom kind of used that as an opportunity to say, you know what, I actually kind of want to retire earlier than I thought. And so that brought the opportunity to my plate. We had talked. I think succession planning is something that the board 5, 6 years ago, 7 years, 10 years ago was worried about. And so they had talked a lot about it, and my name had come up at times. And so there was a kind of a plan in place of how an intentionality, I guess, of mentoring everybody on the team, right? But I think that was, I guess maybe I've been here, almost 14 years, probably 6, 7 years into the career. I thought, I don't want to work for another association. Like, I'm not going to be an association person. I don't know that I want to work for another organization. I love the MACPA. This is my career. I kind of made that shift from like, this is a job and I'll figure things out to that. And so I was part of that next generation of leadership kind of idea. I don't know that I was CEO material at all, but I knew I wanted to be here. And so then when the opportunity came, I thought, well, this is earlier than any of us thought it would happen. I think COVID kind of sped all of that up. And I thought, but man, what a leadership lesson that I just get over the last 2 years, navigating an entire association through COVID, right? So being in those conversations, being part of transitioning our team, that was huge. And so I thought maybe I was ready. So I put my name in the ring. And then, of course, there's a whole national search, huge process, lots of interviews, all of that. I probably answered way more than you wanted on that question.
Yeah,
But
I mean, that's the foundation.
Yes.
That's the background or the context here. But a couple of things that stand out to me, like Becca, even just talking about this, like how much to divulge about your mom's involvement, how much the family relationship there, even just with Tom, your predecessor. I mean, Jackie was there before Tom was. Jackie was like Tom's mentor, even as he's stepping into this CEO role 30 years ago at this point. So Tom's watched you grow up Tom saw you, go off to school and probably was just excited as your parents when you picked a minor in accounting. But that is the reality of succession planning. That is the reality of small business. I mean, personally, my story, I did not want to get into accounting because my parents were accountants, and I'm like farthest thing from that. But there's like a running away from it, and then also just an acknowledgement. You have a base, you have an organization right in your backyard as you're looking at other states and everything. And it kind of took somebody to snap you out of that and be like, this isn't like nepotism. This is an opportunity. This is a perfectly suitable for the gifts that you'd already identified, where you saw right here ready for you.
Right.
And you have earned your position, I would just say, as a board member and as a member of the MACPA. You've earned your right to be the CEO and the head of the state association. It wasn't handed to you. And that's always the fear when you're working in succession planning. Like, I have that fear. I'm like, what do my employees think about me? Do they just think that I'm Sam's pet project that, got handed this position? No, I mean, you were there with the association, and we'll get into a lot of these stories because this is all about stepping into those shoes. You were there with the association when it shifted from annual dues to monthly subscription. You were there with the association when it moved towards remote learning, which positioned the association to be able to survive COVID and remote broadcasting. So if you come in day one and it's like, you're going to here's the company tomorrow, you're the new CEO, that's completely different than stepping into that, gaining that benefit of being mentored by a CEO like Tom, proving your ability to lead departments, your ability to take on these roles, that head of development role. And like you said, position it for success for the next generation. So I just wanted to comment on that and encourage you just a little bit in there, because I know there is always that struggle, the imposter syndrome of, what if I'm not the right person for this company? I'm just Sam's favorite at the right place, right time for this thing.
A very unique thing, right? That realizing that this role, and there's good days and bad days. Like, there's things that feel overwhelming, and then there's things that I get done doing whatever it is, and I go like, I feel like I was made for this. Like, and I don't know that I would have recognized that ahead of time, right? Until you're like in it. But I'm a huge person of faith, and when I talk to students in particular about your career path, because so many of them have these amazing goals and dreams, and I just want to, and then some of them are like, I don't know where I'm going, and they're like freaked out because they're either like extreme, like I have to have this job in this many years planning, or they're like, I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow. And I've always kind of likened my career path to Lombard Street in San Francisco, which like looks crazy, right? Like, you look at it and you're like, somebody was not well when they designed this street, right? But it's designed like that on purpose. It's actually how you safely get to the bottom of that hill, right? With those switchbacks. And when I think about my career and I think about where I am now, I have arrived here safely, and I still got a long road still ahead, but I've arrived here safely because of the things along the way. Like, because I majored in accounting, even though I was like, I think I'm going to do sports management. Let me like just do a double major, right? Then that got me to be able to take the CPA exam. If I didn't have those 3 letters after my name, I probably wouldn't be in this position, right? I wouldn't demand the respect, I guess, when I walk into a room or when my bio's up on a page, right? If I hadn't had those years in public accounting, right, I wouldn't have created a lot of great relationships, but also just experience of what it's like for our members. And what the inside of a firm looks like and how it runs and how it can improve, which I got really passionate about when I left. Like, I recognized that there was nothing wrong with the firm, but there was nothing really wrong with me either. And so I knew there had to be a way that, this business model of the firm could be a place that I could thrive in the future, or a me in the future could thrive with that unique kind of skill set and personalities. And I've actually seen that come to fruition. I know firms now, lots of firms that hire roles like the one I tried to like almost create inside this firm, that are this hybrid, um, experience, a person that is really there to mentor and bring along the next generation. And by the way, because they have the three letters and they know the work, they can do some client work too. But like that person that's really there to support the employees. And so I've seen that role happen. If, I hadn't, gone through all of the public speaking that I did not ask for, that I just got pointed to because I happened to be in the room with Tom, right? I wouldn't be as comfortable as I am now doing it, which, by the way, it never is fully comfortable for
Never
anyone.
fully, yeah.
Yeah.
Tom would also say, I know, because I've asked him, he still gets the pit in his stomach, depending
Oh
on the
gosh,
audience and
it
the topic.
never
and
goes
everything
away.
like
Never
that.
goes
So,
away. Gets easier. You prepare less and less, which
Suppressing
probably
it
isn't a
gets
good
easier.
thing. The preparing less and less is probably a dangerous thing. But also COVID, like, total game changer in doing presentations, right? Doing virtual presentations, how that works. Like, that's a whole nother skill set of how you engage an audience virtually versus in person. And just all of those things that I've learned along the way. The passion for the next generation of CPAs. When I was hired, the biggest challenge facing the profession, and arguably still one of the biggest challenge, is the talent pipeline and how we will attract the next generation. And so for me, it just felt like all of these things coming into place. And that's why, I feel like I've made a mark and will continue to steer this giant ship, right? Because I have the faith that God has brought me to this place and prepared me for it in a lot of ways.
I definitely want to get into guiding the ship. And we'll probably spend the rest of the episode talking about that. Like, what can I do when this organization has existed 90 years before I even came around? Because that is the need. That is the need of a CEO, is to say, I'm in charge of the ship now. What about it was for you with the MACPA and looking at other organizations, looking at other opportunities? Because you could go and become a CEO of any state society with your experience, with what you've learned, your skill set, everything like that. As you looked at the MACPA, other than it's your hometown, it's, we have the best flag out of all the states, all that kind of stuff. What was it about the MACPA that you were like, this one is uniquely positioned, right place, right time, ready for me as a leader, not going to be banging my head against the wall? Had you come to the MACPA 30 years ago, 10 years ago, different, all those challenges. What was it, right place, right time for you when you looked at the MACPA as an organization?
It's probably the people, like, Maryland, and we're super Maryland proud. We love our flag, but the MACPA, and I get to be a steward and a guide and a facilitator of really, really fantastic people. Not just the MACPA team, which are amazing, right? That we have an amazing organizational culture and team, but the members. Like, as an association, we are a collection of people, right? Like, our asset, our product, all of that is all relationally based. And the Maryland in a unique way, and the MACPA, I think, has some of the most forward-thinking and passionate CPAs that I've ever met. And so I was confident in our board of directors. I was confident in our membership and our leaders in the profession in Maryland. Then that made us unique, and made us stand out, and I think continues to. When I go travel throughout the country or whatever, and people talk about Maryland or the MACPA, and I always point back to our leaders. Like, we have had fantastic, diverse, collaborative, really inspirational and innovative leaders. And that's intentionally created, right? But it's that community that attracted me, I think, the most.
Yeah. I guess that's probably how I would reword that question is you talked about, succession planning's been on the board's mind, been on Tom's mind going back 10 years. You've been in place for 4 kind of thing. What is it that the previous generation, do you think, did so successfully to enable the success of the next generation? As we think about family businesses, I can say from my perspective, EOS putting something in place like that where leadership is not just at the top level. It's not just the CEO and the COO doing everything. You talked about raising up internal leaders as far as like the chair, because you guys have a public board. You guys have a board of 12 members that we as members of the MACPA sit on that and help guide the decisions and help provide, context and guidance to you guys as an organization. Even just something like you took a personality profile, that's been ingrained in the MACPA as long as I've been there with the Strengths Finder and the get to understand yourself as a CPA. We don't all fit the direct and methodical or direct and systematic kind of personality. I remember taking my first personality profiles 15 years ago now at this point, and be like, what am I doing in this profession? But then saying, this isn't like a yes or no, you should be a CPA. This is like, how should you be a CPA? How should you lead an organization with your specific skills? So those are some of the things from the outside I've seen. And then also organizationally or operationally, moving to subscription model, moving towards remote at the right time, seeing things that are on the horizon too. What would be your guidance to other state societies out there that are just like, I can't get anybody under 50 interested in being on the board, in being involved in our state associations? Which drastic steps do they need to take possibly to turn their own cruise ship and set it up for success for somebody to be able to come in and guide it?
So I'm going to go like a 2-part here. So the first part you mentioned, like, what did I inherit, or what structures were already in place that enabled me to be successful, right? You mentioned EOS, and that community, that board that I talked about, those people were established. Those leaders in our profession in Maryland were established way before me, right? And that was intentional inclusion and belonging that happened in the MACPA, the culture of how things happened, that was way before me, right?
And that's like a 30-year project.
Exactly. Like if you
Yeah.
want to have, a chair of your board in 30 years, it is an intentional creation of space where people feel welcomed and valued and can collaborate and have input, right? And so that is something that I both inherited and that I love about the MACPA, and I want to continue to cultivate, right? So that people, when they come, they feel welcomed, they feel a part of something. That's the first part. The second part is a little trickier, because if I had all the answers, I certainly would share them, but I don't. It is a unique challenge, I think, right now in our profession, in particular, my profession of a association for CPAs, right? Because I think of the CPA profession and the transformation that it is going through, right? Things like technology, just demographics in general, the business community, all of those things, the profession is changing rapidly, right? And transforming itself. At the same time, the association world is too, right? Things have disrupted that. COVID being a huge force in that. People no longer getting together in person for a significant amount of time, losing touch, losing relationships, instant access to things, the quick and easy way of doing things, all of that technology involved. And so sometimes that is a disconnect of community, right? Like, I can get my community online, or why do I need an expert when I can just chat GPT that? That those two things happening at the same time is honestly what keeps me up at night, right? Because not just the people that I serve and the profession that I serve is transforming, but the association place, the unique lens or the unique community that I'm trying to create within that profession is changing. And so it's hard. Like, you're asking people that probably some of the busiest people in their, life stage, right? They're working hard. They are, maybe that senior to manager level in a firm. Maybe they're on the corporate side. They have young families, and that's our target market. Like, we have to engage those people so that we have leaders for the future. And it's hard. It is really hard. And I think in a lot of ways, the community aspect got hurt a lot with the busyness of the profession in a lot of ways. Because one of the things that I remember, if I look back at our historic leaders, like legacy, our past chairs, a lot of them came to the association because somebody tapped them on the shoulder at their firm, at their organization, and said, hey, I'm going to an MACPA committee meeting, or I'm going to this event. Let's go. In a COVID era, in a remote working era, in a busy time, those things just didn't happen. And so we have this lost group in the middle. And so how we cut through the noise to bring those people together, because I think they are in a way starving for community that matters. It's hard. It is hard to get people in person for things. And I think that's where real community happens. So it's a tricky thing.
I hope that you've enjoyed part 1 of my conversation with my friend Rebekah Olson. Here on the Art of Succession podcast, we have interviews with business owners twice a month with their own succession stories. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, you can find the link for that down in the description below. We're going to pick up part 2 of our conversation, talking about stewarding an organization that pre-exists you and how you think about vision and the future and steering that ship. And you can find that linked right here. I want to thank you for watching the Art of Succession podcast, and I will see you on the next episode.